you have a roof over your head, if you have food in your stomach, you're okay, you know? I think we all get wrapped up so much in situations and even emotions at times that it's hard to see that simple fact, you know, the simple fact and the simple things that, you know, make us blessed, you know. I mean, just being alive here on this earth, in this space and time actually, is a blessing because although I do believe there is no real concept of time, the coordinates of the energy, the right here, the right now, is all there is and all that's important. So if you're struggling today or tomorrow or whenever, remember, you know, there's always something to be thankful for. Without sounding like a complete cliche, I just thought I'd add that. So anyway, welcome everyone to Jenny's house. This is a new show that I'm going to do whenever I can. I've made it a point to start doing some programs on my own network. Why? Because I can, number one, right? But also because, you know, throughout the years, I've done shows and, you know, you sometimes you get tired of I don't know, the way that it seems, you know, like there's some kind of weird politics at times at different platforms or agendas or snobbery or, you know, whatever it may be. It's the same story, different community, different industry, you know, and you just, well, not you, I can speak for me personally. When I have nothing to say, then I won't say it. And when I do, I will do a show, you know. So I can't promise a regular schedule, but I do plan to make maybe a once a month show at the very least. And it doesn't matter, you know, the time. It just, for me, my schedules tend to get crazy at times, and I realize 4 p.m. Could be too early or too late or too whatever for all different types of people, but this is the time for the day that I could manage. So here we are, you know, and thank you for being here, and thank you for listening, and definitely thank you to those who will be coming in archives. We have a couple of guests here right now. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it very, very much. Now, you might be wondering why my show page has a big old picture of a worm, or caterpillar, actually, on my page just above the chat room. It's kind of a weird thing, yeah? Well, this is in relation to what I wanted to talk about today, which is manifestations. Now, when I say manifestations, I don't mean creating, you know, fulfilling actually the need to have something, a Cadillac, a diamond ring, a boyfriend, a girlfriend. Manifestation in this context is about something, you know, a collected energy that may or may not create upsets or things that go bump in the night. There's differences between spirits, manifestations, poltergeists. There are differences. And so I guess first I'd like to explain about manifestation. They are basically thought forms, and we've heard this come up recently. I think the concept has been around for quite a while, but manifestations are, simply put, they're thought forms from myself or from you or from others that begin to create energy. You know, a good example of a manifestation could be a high concentration, I suppose, of energy that is suddenly visible or audible. You know, sometimes when we hear something or we see something, it's a manifestation that you've created. Now, I understand that this topic is on the fringe, if not all the way in there head first, but it is something that is acknowledged and talked about in the spiritual community. In fact, I know that psychic medium Renee Richards has some material on that somewhere. I believe maybe even on IntuiTalks on one of her shows. She had made mention of thought forms. So when I say manifestations, this is what I'm talking about. They are, signatures of energy that have been created by thought. But I believe that it's a combination of thought and emotion. I think that a great deal of emotion takes precedence over just thoughts, because if we, I believe I read we have about 20,000 thoughts a minute, okay, and some of which we don't even know that we're doing. The mind is designed to analyze and place data for later, for survival. I mean, we're always thinking and doing and processing. There's so much going on in the background that we couldn't quite possibly know or stop or pick up every thought that we've done, and I think when people say watch your thoughts, they can become reality. I agree with that to a point, but I also believe that there has to be more to it, just like with manifesting, which is totally different than what we're talking about today. But, if you want to use that as an example in terms of the law of attraction, if you think something, do you get it? Do you get something by just affirming? No, you don't. My honest opinion, no, you don't. It's the intention, the heart, the emotion behind it. So, would it make sense in regards to manifestations, thought forms, that rule also applies? So when we have negative thoughts and negative emotions, can they create manifestations, which are concentrated energy that forms where you can see it or hear it or even feel it? Sometimes you can go into a home and you can feel a presence. Now, is it spirit? That's number one. That's your number one thought. Is it residual energy? Maybe secondary, right? Residual energy works very similarly, in my opinion, where if you go into a home that has had a lot of trauma, let's say there was a murder, awful things happened there, that emotion, that energy, those actions that occurred could have accumulated a great deal of negative energy, which you feel or you might see as a form of something. Okay? So that's 2. 3 is what we're talking about today, which is manifestations, which is something that is created by you, your thoughts, and your emotions. I need to keep applying or putting that notion in that I feel it's more emotions than just thoughts. Okay? So with that being said, oh gosh, I just turned around and I see the chat room. Hey everybody, I probably will not turn around again for a while because I do lose my train of thought. But thank you so much for being here. Aw, so sweet. So sweet. Thanks for being here, guys. So anyway, that is what I wanted to talk about, and like I said, it is kind of a known thing in the industry. Maybe not as known as, of course, spirit or whatever, but manifestations, in my opinion, are in fact real. They can happen, and they are often mislabeled as spirit. You know, and I'd like to tell you a quick story about someone who I was working with, who came to me and told me that there was in fact something going on in their house. And, well, I'm not a paranormal investigator. I don't even claim to be anything. You know, if you notice, I don't come out and I don't say I'm a psychic medium. I don't say I'm a psychic. I think if anything, I water it down to at least intuitive. And the reason I do that is not because I undervalue myself. It's because I was labelless, even when labelless, say that 3 times fast, wasn't cool. I just don't like to limit myself, define myself. I am a free spirit, and we all are. We have that autonomy in our energy. And I feel that, for me, my abilities appear when they need to. So sometimes I cannot read anyone's crossed over loved one. I cannot connect to them. Sometimes I can, a whole lot. And sometimes I can tell what you had for breakfast 2 days ago. Not that that would matter, you know, and sometimes I cannot. You know, it's just, for me, that's always the way it's been. I feel like the abilities that I have are not mine. They're given to me to help people if and when I can. You know, so with that being said, back to the story. I went to her house, and I did feel a presence. There was no doubt about it, and it was a female, and I could see her. And me, I don't see with my eye physically. I see with my mind's eye, and the impression was it was kind of like an 80s hairdo, glasses, light brown hair, and this girl was terrified in this house. And it was very sad. There was heaviness and sadness and hopelessness and nervousness and fear. It was uncomfortable. And to be honest with you, it was over 10 years ago when I did this. And I walked right out of that house. I am very sensitive to energy as it is, and back then, even more so. I walked out of the house. I said, I will see what I can do remotely. But at this time, I'm not coming back, you know? So anyway, I started to try, and you could do that. You don't have to be anywhere, in my opinion, because the energy is so fluid and all around us at all times. It takes 1 second to be anywhere and to see anything and to do any of this stuff, anything. Healing and seeing and feeling is all one thing, one energy. You know, it just looks different. We perceive things different. So anyway, my perception of this energy felt like a very lost soul, someone who is afraid, and I know that there's contradiction in that in itself. You know, whether or not we even need to cross people over or whatever, but I can tell you that in my experience, and that's all I can speak from, that there are spirits who need that. You know, even if it's just to show them the light, even if it's just that they needed acknowledgement. Yes, you passed, and this is how it happened. sometimes that's all they need. It's they want to tell somebody something. Anyway, in this case, and this is what made this so very interesting, I had tried everything to the best of my ability at that time to speak with this spirit, who did speak, who did answer. It was quite interesting. Okay, we're still going into the fringe there. I apologize, but and I asked her name, and every time I did, it was a different name. It was really very strange, and I realized, actually through a dream afterwards, after the third or fourth weird name, through a dream, I realized this wasn't what I thought it was. Like I had this dream, and I believe that at times dreams can help you, can speak to you. You can work in dreams even. I have found that I have helped people through dreams, and it's not like I'm great hot shit on a platter or anything, part of my language, but I think that I'm saying this because I think we all can do it, but anyway, it was just something in the dream that told me that this was not what I thought it was, because I thought that this spirit was just so lost and so scared that it needed, more coaxing, more time, more love, whatever. Turns out one thing I was right about was that it needed more love. Fast forward, I talk a lot, and I will get to my point. Fast forward, this was a part, an extension, a manifestation of the woman who owned the home. My friend who called and told me that she had a presence in her home. It was her manifestation. It was a part of her. In fact, later as I kind of tried to untangle this puzzle, the picture that I had, the impression I had of the woman, was in fact her when she was a young teenager. She had went through a traumatic thing as a teenager. In fact, she was bullied very badly, very severely. And it left an impression so deep that this manifestation appeared. And why did it appear then? She just moved into that house not 6 months before the presence, was noted. And she had said that this home reminded her of her parents' house. Something triggered that inside her subconscious. And this is when the manifestation occurred. You follow me? I don't know if that makes sense. But anyway, I found that to be the most fascinating thing ever, is that an actual spirit or something that looks exactly like a spirit could really be something that someone has created themselves with their mind and their emotion, their thoughts. Very, very interesting. Needless to say, we did a lot of energy work, a lot of healing. And I'll get back to that in a moment, but I just want to check my phone line here because there are some callers hanging, and what I like to do is I like to make you eat your dinner first. You know what I'm saying? And then you can have dessert later. So in other words, you kind of have to listen to me go on and on about, whatever topic I have, and then you can have your dessert, which might be a reading. Okay, so hang tight if you'd like to, and I will get to the callers when I'm ready. Okay. So I just turned around again, and I see the chat room, and you know what? Thank you so much for being here. I know it's an awkward time, and it's a not for everyone subject. So Deborah is here, And Diane is here, and Shelby, and a few guests. Thank you so much for being here. I think it's a great time to stop and say, oh my gosh, like I appreciate you guys so much. And Shelby just had a show. Shelby Aesthetic, who is an amazing energy reader, had a show yesterday that I was lucky enough to attend, and she had Kathleen Moore with her psychic medium, and they had a fantastic conversation. It was a treat for me, and it's really hard because I've always tried to on the network here at IntuiTalks.com. There's my shameless plug. I've always tried to be fair and not go to one show and not the other, but I got to tell you, there's something about Shelby. Her energy is amazing, and I love to go to her shows, and I love to go to all of the shows. Sometimes I can't, I have this weird, crazy schedule at times, but definitely if you haven't heard that show, check it out. It's at thirdeyebetty.com here at the IntuiTalks Network. Anyway, I always get off track. I know, right? Shelby, she said her cheeks are red. I am like hotter than 9 kinds of hell, I got to tell you. But thank you for being here, and this is a treat for me to get on the air. It's very awkward because, first of all, you're monologuing by yourself. There's no give and take or feedback when this happens, but it's okay. It's just a little bit, it's kind of like when you have training wheels on your bicycle and then you take the training wheels off and then off you go, right? So anyway, what I wanted to continue to say about the manifestations is that, again, through experience is what leads me to believe that this is true. There's lots of awesome books to read, and I read them, but I don't take them as fact. I take them as consideration. I consider, but the real truth, in my opinion, your own truth, is your experience. And I understand we have perception. So that makes it even more fun and complicated, It's kind of like I have my perception based on how I've lived, what I've seen, how I feel, all the thought patterns. There we go, right? So my perception may not necessarily be the same as yours, but if we all can agree that there's something more than this body, this flesh, then there is. I guess it's as simple as that. So, manifestations, in my opinion, again, are in fact real, and there's all different forms. So what I wanted to tell you guys of what I've discovered myself is something that I've seen all my life and did not realize what it was until about 6 months ago. How do I explain? So I don't always have my light on in terms of picking up spirit or anything, but throughout my whole life, especially when I was little, it was super crazy, super active, and I would get these weird things that come when I'm ready to sleep, and I would be so scared. I'd be sweating. I'd be under the covers, because I can feel that presence, and I found out later through experience and through a lot of challenges and things to overcome that fear. You eventually start dipping your toe in a little bit deeper, and I started to actually try and talk to them, that sort of thing. And I found out that there are spirits that do come to me because they need help or acknowledgement or whatever. And it still goes on. You know, I kind of put my boundaries up. I go, "Bleh." But at times when, especially when I'm just ready to sleep, there comes somebody on my right side, you know, and they either want me to just acknowledge their story. I mean, there have been times when they've told me their name and what happened to them, and I Google them and I find them, and then they go. You know, weird stuff. And again, thank God that I'm talking to like-minded people, because I realize that this stuff is definitely out there. But, you know, if you can confirm things like that, it makes you feel less out there anyway. So what I want to say, though, is in my experience of having these come to me on my right side, which is only for me, my perception of those who are in trouble or need help or whatever, they come on my right side. I have always tried to lead them to the light, and I have seen something else behind them 85 to 90% of the time. And this is what I wanted to talk about. Hence why we have the picture of a caterpillar on the top of my show page. This is my point here. When I've crossed over people, or my perception of crossing over people, because I realize, you know, I'm not the be-all, end-all of how this all works. I can tell you how it works for me. But when I cross people over, I have seen the strangest things, and I kind of always felt that it was maybe like an extension of my imagination. You know, you see the person, you know, go into the light, so to speak, and then you see other things follow it into the light. This is what I've seen for years and years and years. Never knew what it was, didn't pay much attention to it until I came across an article about 6 months ago, which I don't even know where it is. It was on some Facebook group or maybe Pinterest, you know, one of these things where they had pictures of bugs, and they said manifestation. Or, well, they didn't call it that. They called it thought forms, which I think is what we're all saying now. And I read this thing, and I just, you know, I had this flash, and I said to myself, oh my God, oh my God. You know, more confirmation that thought forms are real, because I've seen them 80, 85, 90% of the time when people are crossing into the light. So, you know, I was going to put this into a blog, and then I thought, you know, I need to get back into the show thing, and this was why I wanted to share that. So what I've seen is when people cross over, their thought forms, their manifestations also cross over, but they don't go past. They actually just seem to dissipate into energy, into that white energy where there's the pass-through to go to the other side. Now, again, that's my perception of crossing over. You know, yours may be different. But what I found fascinating was that I remember one time there was a guy who was crossing over, and right after it was this huge spider. Oh my God, just the impression of it. Again, you know, you don't see it with your physical eye, but this was this huge spider. It was like something from the 50s movies. That I think that movie Them, I'm sure nobody has seen it, but you know, it was this giant spider that followed behind him and went into this white light where he already went through the other side and just dissipated into energy. That's probably my most memorable one because that was the creepiest one, in my opinion. There's been others, little tiny tiny, beetles or palmetto bugs or whatever, strange animals and whatnot. I always wondered what the heck that was that followed most of the people, and it turns out, I think, that was manifestations or thought forms of that crossed over person. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys. I mean, it's really quite a thing, to discover that. It's kind of like, yeah, it is fascinating, and I just, if you Google it, I'm not sure it will come up. I will look for it. I should have saved it when I read it, but that's really the coolest thing ever. You don't take that stuff with you. It just kind of reinforces that idea, that you don't take that stuff with you when you go, If you think your grandmother's mad at you or your ex-boyfriend was mad because you didn't call him before he passed and all this other stuff, guess what? It's not true. We just don't hold that same pattern of thought, that same me energy, that same ego that, is useful sometimes in this world, but we just don't have it. And it does dissipate. I don't know. Just neat stuff, guys. Neat stuff. So once again, thank you guys for being here. I'm going to take a short break. My throat is like, oh my God, how much more are you going to talk? So I'll be back in about 5 minutes. Thank you so much for being here. cliche in the spiritual community, I guess, because she's like the one. You know, she was her voice was always so magical, is always so magical. But that one doesn't get played too often. So anyway, that was Sarah from Fleetwood Mac, and you're listening to Jenny's house. And this is basically what my house is like if you were to visit me. I would probably have tea or coffee for you, though. So sorry about that, guys. But we would have beverages and we would chat, and we would most likely have a deep conversation because I am just not the kind of how's the weather person. And, you know, how do you make meatloaf in a microwave type person? I just can't be that way. I can stay for a minute or two, but I need to go to another dimension, I guess. So anyway, thank you once again, guys, for being here. I know you have a choice on where to be, so it means a lot that you're here. You know, keep in mind always that whatever anybody on any radio show, we're all just sort of blindfolded and feeling around in this place. So I don't know any more than you do. You know, it's just all about sharing, and my perception, you know, may vary from yours, but it's really neat to connect in that way and to even convey something that maybe someone else had an idea about and just wasn't sure, or even was too scared to say. I mean, it's still out there. As much as there's been a great deal of saturation in the community, you know, there's still stigma behind this stuff. There still is. So I'm not afraid to join the crazy bus, ladies and gentlemen. Just saying. So what I wanted to get back to something, and that was to share about my friend. You know, what happened to her? What did we do? You know, and more importantly, how can we get rid of these manifestations if we had them? And how do we know we have them? Right? So that's a bunch of questions. I'll try to answer them all, in my opinion. You know, first of all, and I hate to do this because it's not to say that you cannot do this on your own, but it would help a great deal to work with someone or find someone who does work with energy and can see. You know, not all of us see it, and not all of us can perceive it in the exact same way, but you know, I think you know where I'm going with that. You know, if you have an idea, you know, if you are, let's for instance say, if you are finding a lot of blockages all the time and you don't know why, not necessarily a manifestation, but something to look at. You know, it's just like your body, they show symptoms, you know, and it's like these, you know, if you went to a traditional doctor, based on those symptoms, we would find, perhaps, hopefully, what's wrong with you, right? If anything. So, how do you spot them? My hugest recommendation is to find somebody who works with energy, like I said, and I can tell you somebody right in the chat, you know, or something like, you know, I'm not trying to give Shelby some weird bad work there, but, you know, she works with energy. I work with energy, you know, but I just don't do, I don't do that professionally. So anyway, I mean, I kind of, the way I work is that they seem to find me even to this day. I don't advertise, I don't market, I don't do this professionally, so to speak, but if you find me, I'll help you. You know what I mean? If I can. And if I can't, I will let you know of others who I think can help. So anyway, that's your first thing if you want to. You know, if you do have feelings of presences, do some research, check it out. We do tend to get these feelings around us. In fact, there is proof scientifically that we have receptors on our body that are outside of our body to pick up things. For instance, if you have your eyes closed, but someone comes close enough to you, why do you open your eyes? Provided there's no sound or anything else, why do you open your eyes? It's because of those sensories, right? Those senses that, these little receptors, I guess you can say, that can pick up things outside of the body. So anyway, with that being said, if you feel a presence around you, what is it, right? Stop and try to feel that. And really, I think that our biggest enemy is busyness, right? I think that what keeps us from communicating with ourselves within and with others outside or other spirits and things like that is there's not enough stillness, Even when we're sitting still, I bet you the mind is doing all kinds of things, even when we don't realize it, right? Like we said before, it's something like 20,000 thoughts a minute. It's just, whoa, right? So, you can look that up all day long on YouTube or whatever. You can find that stillness in so many things, in so many ways. Namely, I've been saying this for a long, long time, just doing something repetitive like washing dishes or taking a shower, that is great stillness. So anyway, try to you can do this, you can feel what's what. And, if it's scary, 9 times out of 10, in my opinion, a spirit, you might be scared because you're not used to the energy, but it's not there to harm you. But if it is a heavy feeling, is it yours? Same thing, with psychometry, which I recommend. I've been recommending for a very long time to practice intuition. It's just feeling objects. Is that yours? Is it mine? What the feeling you get? Whose is it? So anyway, I forgot all the questions I had asked to answer, but what you could do is find out if it's you, if it's your presence. Don't discount that idea entirely, but don't always use that as an excuse either, right? I mean, we can definitely go there too. But what I did in the case of my friend, now she had been bullied for most of her adolescence, and you hear about this stuff, and I'm not quite sure that people understand the impact that could have on a soul. In shamanism, we talk about soul fragmentation. And this is where you lose pieces of yourself, of your spirit. And believe me when I tell you this, that can happen to someone, and we all have our different ways of dealing with things and how we're affected. Some of us can move forward without an issue with the same situation, and some of us can't. Does not make one better than the other. It's just so many factors. So she was definitely traumatized. It was really tough stuff. And that manifestation, that little girl who every time I saw her was leaning against the wall with her knees up to her chest, just terrified and not wanting to be who she was. I said to my friend, I said, You've got to give her the love that she didn't have then. You have to, it's in parallel to doing it now to yourself. You know, there's something, like right now for me, I'm in the stage where I'm reparenting myself, for example. I grew up very fast and I did not have a traditional childhood. And there were things that I missed or I didn't do. You know, now I like the unicorns and the fuzzy slippers and the pink flowers. When I was a kid, I was more of a tomboy. You know, nothing wrong with being a tomboy. I enjoyed the heck out of myself, you know. But I am reparenting myself now, and I'm giving myself all the things a little girl, me as a little girl, would have wanted if she didn't have to protect herself so much, if that makes sense. Okay, so the same thing applied to my friend and her manifestation. You know, not parenting, but love and support and strength. You know, building up her self-esteem and her strength. So it was a parallel thing where we had to give her in the present as much love as possible and as much support and as much knowledge to know that she can stand on her own 2 feet. And we have to also convey that to the younger version of her, if that makes sense. So it was a series of those things, you know, and there were moments where she, you know, in her present started to break down. But, you know, sometimes we have to break down to begin again, you know, and here comes the ice cream man, guys. Anyway, it was a beautiful thing to watch as it evolved and grew, you know, and she became an amazing person. In fact, she's an art teacher now, and she teaches the children through art about, you know, self-esteem and love for oneself, which, you know, I know nowadays there's a great deal of bullying going on, but there is also more knowledge and support. I'm not sure about back then, but I think the more love and knowledge and strength that we can give children, the better. And it applies to adults too, because I can tell you that there are adults right now who are in a workplace who are being bullied, who feel less than, not even just from being bullied, but from their life. And the problem here is most always that lack of support, that lack of love for whatever reason. And that's why it's important, and I try to make a point myself. I'm not perfect, but I like to try and give people what I didn't have, what I never want to feel like again. You know, like it's one of those things, and you can look inside yourself and find out what it is that you lacked, and that's probably your manifestation. You might not see it. You may not even feel it, but talk to that inner self, you know, find out what's really going on, and you can probably help that a great deal, you know, is my point. And I'm so glad that I have circus music in the background for this monologue, guys. This is so funny. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's hysterical. Meanwhile, I am almost over. I don't know where the time went. You see, you get me talking, and there's no stopping me, right? So I guess the bottom line is that be good to yourself, be good to one another, and that does make a difference. It sounds so corny and so cliche, but you will see people on social media, and we all look so shiny and cool, but we're all the same. and we all have challenges, and we all have these little, not all of us, but if we don't have manifestations, we have some challenges in life. And, you know, is it cool to begrudge someone? Or is it cool to, you know, judge them or to look at them, you know, in a negative way? You know, yes, we're human. We have our first thoughts. We do this, we do that, but we can turn around real quick and change that very, very quickly. So anyway, that is it. That is my time. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being here, guys. I'm going to try and do more shows. The problem is I just don't know my schedule. It can get crazy. There's a button on the right, on the bottom right of this show page. It says follow. And if you click that and put your email in it, if I post a show, you'll get notified. If not, just check my Facebook or IntuiTalks.com. It's been a real pleasure to be here today and to talk to you guys. And oh my goodness, I sure hope that you guys have a good day. And thank you so much for being here. All right, I'll see you later.